I remember the snap of my own bone. It was a sound sharper than a hunter's screech, more final than the silence that follows a failed hunt. My own brother, Stryk, held my leg pin beneath his powerful foot. His eyes, the color of hardened amber, held no warmth, no kinship. Only cold, reptilian calculation. I was Kale, and I was born wrong. In a world where perfection meant survival, my left killing claw was a mockery. Instead of the elegant, sickle-shaped death dealer my packmate sported, mine was a gnarled, twisted thing, more a burden than a weapon. It made me clumsy. It made me slow. It made me a runt, a constant drain on the pack's resources in the harsh scrublands of the Jurassic. Stryk never let me forget it. He was my elder by a season, born perfect and powerful. His claws were pristine, his muscles coiled like powerful vines beneath his patterned hide. He was the pack's future alpha, and I was his favorite punching bag, a living symbol of the weakness he despised. Look at him, Stryk would sneer to the others after I'd stumbled during a chase. He trips over his own ambition. He has none. The other young raptors, eager to curry favor with the future leader, would join in with clicks and hisses of derision. Our alpha, a scarred veteran named Cord, tolerated my existence only because our mother had been a formidable huntress before a lung infection had claimed her. But his patience, like the meat on a carcass, was wearing thin. The dry season was long this year. The herds were thin and skittish, and hunger was a constant ache in our bellies. Desperation drove us to riskier hunts, pushing us into territories patrolled by larger, more dangerous carnivores. That was how we found ourselves at the edge of the Great Clearing, stalking a family of iguanodons. They were large, powerful herbivores, and taking one down would be a monumental effort requiring perfect coordination. Coordination I threatened to disrupt. Kale, you stay on the far flank, Cord had ordered, his voice a low growl. Your job is simple. When we drive them, you just need to turn them back. Do not engage. Do not get in the way. It was a task for a novice, a simple scare tactic. But even then, I could see the doubt in his eyes. Stryk shot me a look of pure contempt. Try not to break a nail, brother, he hissed, the word brother's a venomous dart. The hunt began. The pack moved like a single, fluid organism, a symphony of silent signals and predatory grace. I watched from my position, my heart thrumming with a desperate need to prove myself. I could do this. I just had to be a wall. The pack burst from the scythed forest, a wave of teeth and claws. The iguanodons panicked, bellowing in alarm, their herd scattering in a chaotic stampede. Two younger ones, confused and terrified, broke in my direction. This was my moment. I tensed my muscles, preparing to leap out, to screech and flash my claws as I'd been taught. To be the terrifying wall Cord demanded. But as I gathered myself, the ground began to tremble with a rhythm deeper and more powerful than the fleeing herbivores. A shadow fell over the clearing, a moving mountain of muscle and predatory intent. Allosaurus. It was a monster, a titan from our darkest legends. Easily 3 times our size, its head was a hatchet of bone and teeth, its eyes burning with an ancient, unthinking hunger. It had been drawn by the commotion, a king arriving to claim its tithe from the lesser hunters. The pack froze. Our coordinated attack shattered. The iguanodons were forgotten. Survival was the only instinct left. Scatter! Cord shrieked, his alpha authority dissolving into raw terror. The pack obeyed instantly, melting back into the trees. I turned to follow, my legs pumping, terror lending me a speed I rarely possessed. But a heavy weight slammed into my side. It was Stryk. He hadn't fled with the others. He had run straight at me. The beast is too fast, he growled, his voice tight with a terrifying kind of calm. It will catch one of us. I didn't understand. We have to run. I chirped, my voice cracking with fear. It needs a distraction, Stryk said, his eyes locking onto mine. And in that moment, I saw his plan unfold in all its horrific simplicity. Something slow. Something loud. Before I could process his words, his jaws clamped around my right leg. I screamed, a sound of shock and betrayal. He twisted. The snap echoed in my own skull, a white-hot explosion of agony. My leg gave way, folding at an impossible angle. I collapsed to the dusty earth, the world spinning in a nauseating blur of pain. Through the haze, I saw Stryk look back towards the approaching Allosaurus, then at the rest of the pack, now distant shapes vanishing into the safety of the woods. He had their attention. He was performing for them. "Forgive me, brother," he said, his voice dripping with false solemnity for the benefit of any who might be watching. "Your sacrifice will be remembered." He kicked me then, a brutal shove that sent me tumbling into the open, directly into the path of the oncoming behemoth. I lay there, crippled and helpless, my lifeblood soaking into the thirsty ground. I could hear the Allosaurus's thunderous footsteps, feel the vibrations in my broken bones. I raised my head, my vision swimming. I saw my pack, my family, paused at the edge of the tree line, watching me die. They had all stopped to witness the sacrifice Stryk had made for them. No one moved to help. No one cried out. They just watched, ensuring the monster's attention was fully fixed on me. They were all complicit. The Allosaurus loomed over me, its stench a foul miasma of rot and carrion. Its massive head blotted out the sun. I saw the rows of dagger-like teeth, the saliva dripping like foul rain. I closed my eyes, a final, guttural scream of rage and betrayal tearing from my throat. This was not a hunt. This was an execution. The jaws descended. But in that final microsecond, as unimaginable pressure began to crush my ribs, something impossible happened. A new star blazed in the sky. It was a searing point of blue-white light, brighter than the sun, and it was falling. It wasn't a star. It was a rock, a shard of the heavens, trailing cosmic fire. It slammed into the earth not 50 paces away with a deafening, earth-shattering boom. The ground heaved, throwing the Allosaurus off balance for a heartbeat. A wave of energy, invisible and profound, washed out from the impact site. It wasn't heat. It wasn't force. It was something else entirely. It swept over me, through me, into the very core of my being. The Allosaurus's teeth, which had begun to pierce my hide, suddenly felt distant. The agony of my shattered leg, the crushing weight on my chest, it all began to fade, replaced by a strange, tingling numbness. And then, a new sensation. Power. A voice, not of sound but of pure information, bloomed inside my consciousness. Primordial system initializing. Host vitals critical. Emergency restructure protocol engaged. Analyzing host DNA, Raptor. Designating class, rogue assassin. The Allosaurus, confused by the celestial event, roared and bit down harder. I felt its teeth grind against my bones. But as my life was being extinguished, the strange energy surged within me, fighting back against the darkness. Threat detected, Allosaurus. Superior predator. New objective generated, survive. Ability unlocked, essence absorption. My broken body, my mangled flesh, became a conduit for this new, alien power. The world didn't go black. It turned crystalline blue. My consciousness wasn't snuffed out. It was reforged. As the monster's jaws finally crushed the life from my physical form, the system spoke one last time in that first, terrible moment. Evolutionary energy detected. Source, crystalline meteorite fragment. Absorbing. Integrating. Rebirth sequence initiated. I died in the jaws of a monster, betrayed by my own blood. But I did not perish. In the heart of that cosmic fire and reptilian fury, I was born again. And my first coherent thought in my new existence was not of survival. It was of revenge. First, the Allosaurus. Then, Stryk. And after him, the entire pack that stood by and watched me die. They had created their own monster. Now, it was time to show them what a monster truly was. I awoke to the scent of ozone and blood. The world was sharp. Sharper than it had ever been. The individual blades of ferns, the texture of the bark on a distant tree, the subtle shift of air currents, I could perceive it all with a clarity that was overwhelming. My body felt whole. I pushed myself up, my limbs moving with a fluid grace I had never known. My right leg, the one Stryk had shattered, was perfect. Not just healed, but stronger, the muscles denser. I looked down at my left foot, at the killing claw that had been the source of my lifelong shame. The gnarled, useless nub was gone. In its place was a sickle of obsidian-sharp keratin, larger, thicker, and more perfectly curved than even Stryk's. It felt like an extension of my will, a scalpel crafted for deconstruction. Then I saw it. Hovering in the corner of my vision, translucent yet undeniable. A series of words and symbols that only I could see. Kale. Class, Rogue Assassin. Level, 1. HP, 100/100. Energy, 100/100. Stats. Strength, 12. Agility, 15. Intelligence, 10. Vitality, 10. Perception, 14. Unallocated points, 0. Abilities. Essence absorption, passive, absorb the life essence of slain foes to gain experience and evolutionary energy. Stealth, active, mute sounds and blend with surroundings. Cost, 5 energy per minute. The voice from before, the system, was now a silent text in my mind. It was real. The falling star, the energy, it had saved me and changed me. I took a step, then another. No limp. No stumble. I was faster, more balanced. I felt a core of power humming within me, a reservoir of what the system called energy. A rustle in the undergrowth caught my attention. My head snapped towards the sound, my new perception pinpointing its exact location. A Compsognathus, a small, bird-like scavenger, darted out, pecking at a piece of flesh torn from me during the attack. Before, I would have ignored it. I was no hunter of such minuscule prey. But now, a cold instinct took over. New objective, first kill. Reward, experience, system familiarization. I didn't think. I acted. I crouched low, activating that stealth ability in my mind. A cool sensation washed over me, and the rustle of my own scales seemed to vanish. The world's ambient noises grew slightly louder as my own became silent. The Compsognathus, oblivious, continued its meal. I closed the distance in 3 silent, fluid strides. The small creature finally sensed danger, its head jerking up. It was too late. My new killing claw, the one that was supposed to be my weakness, flashed out in a blur of motion. It was an instinctual, perfect strike. The claw sliced cleanly through the scavenger's neck, a near-silent execution. The tiny body convulsed once and then lay still. Kill confirmed, Compsognathus, level 1. Experience gained, 5 XP. Essence absorbed. Minor increase to agility. A faint, shimmering light flowed from the dead creature into me. It was a pleasant, invigorating feeling. And a new line appeared in my status. Experience, 5/100 to level 2. I looked at the dead Compsognathus, then back at my claw. This was the key. This system. This power of essence absorption. The more I killed, the stronger I would become. My mind reeled with the possibilities. The rage from Stryk's betrayal was still a burning coal in my gut, but now it was tempered with a cold, sharp focus. Revenge wasn't just a desire anymore, it was a path. A ladder I would climb, with the corpses of my enemies as the rungs. But I was still weak. Level 1. The Allosaurus was out there somewhere. It was a god of flesh and bone. To face it, I needed to become a demon. And to do that, I needed to hunt. My first few days were a blur of methodical extermination. I left my old territory behind, moving into a dense, swampy jungle where prey was abundant and varied. I was no longer a pack hunter. I was a ghost. I learned the nuances of the system. I stalked and killed every small creature I could find. Lizards, early mammals no bigger than my claw, other small dinosaurs. Each kill fed me a trickle of experience, a whisper of essence. Kill confirmed, Archaeopteryx, level 2. XP gained, 10. Kill confirmed, Frutafasa, level 1. XP gained, 5. With each kill, I felt my stats subtly shift. A kill requiring a burst of speed would grant me a whisper of agility. Outsmarting a hiding creature gave a spark to my intelligence. It was a slow, grueling process, but I was patient. Stryk had taught me the value of patience, in a way. He had patiently waited for the perfect moment to discard me. I would patiently build myself into the instrument of his destruction. After a week of relentless hunting, a new message chimed in my mind. Experience threshold reached. Level up. Kale level 2. HP and energy fully restored. You have 5 unallocated stat points. I felt a surge of vitality, the aches of a week of constant movement vanishing. I now had a choice to make. Where to put these points? Strength? Agility? Intelligence? I thought of the Allosaurus. Brute strength wouldn't be enough. I needed speed to evade its attacks, but more than that, I needed to be smarter than it. I thought of Stryk. He was strong and fast. To beat him, I couldn't just match him, I had to exceed him in every way, especially in cunning. Intelligence. That was the key. Allocating 3 points to intelligence. Allocating 2 points to agility. Stats updated. Strength, 12. Agility, 17. Intelligence, 13. Vitality, 10. Perception, 14. The world seemed to sharpen even more. New connections formed in my mind. I saw the patterns in the prey's movements not just as instinct, but as a solvable puzzle. I could predict where a creature would flee, how it would react to a sound, the path of least resistance it would take. My hunting became ruthlessly efficient. I started targeting larger, more challenging prey. A lone Dinosaurus, fast and nimble. I didn't just chase it. I used my growing intelligence to herd it, creating false escape routes with loud noises, channeling it into a narrow ravine where its speed was useless. The kill was clean, and the rewards were far greater. Kill confirmed, Dinosaurus, level 5. XP gained, 50. Essence absorbed. Significant increase to agility. New skill unlocked, Pounce. A powerful leaping attack that can stagger opponents. Cost, 10 energy. The system was my guide, my weapon, and my path forward. Days turned into weeks. I leveled up again, and then again. I poured my points into agility and intelligence, with a few into strength and vitality to keep my body robust. I was becoming something new. My scales, once a drab brown, were taking on a darker, almost obsidian sheen, perfect for hiding in the shadows. My frame was still that of a Raptor, but leaner, more powerful, a predator home to a razor's edge. I learned to use the environment as my primary weapon. I would trigger small rock slides to corner prey. I'd use my pounce ability from high branches, a silent, descending angel of death. One day, while patrolling the edge of a vast, open plain, I found it. A footprint. It was colossal, a 3-toed crater pressed deep into the dried mud. My whole body went rigid. There was no mistaking it. The stench of carrion, faint on the wind, confirmed it. Allosaurus. The system, as if sensing the hatred coiling in my gut, issued a new notification. Legendary objective acquired, a runt's revenge. Objective, slay the Allosaurus that nearly killed you. Rewards, massive experience, high-tier essence, title, Giant Slayer. It was time. I wasn't ready to fight it. Not yet. But I was ready to start stalking it. To learn my enemy. To watch the monster that had unmade me, and to plot the methods of its demise. I was Kale, level 7 rogue assassin. I was no longer the runt. I was a shadow with a purpose, a promise of vengeance written in blood and bone. And my first target was finally in sight. The Allosaurus's territory was a graveyard. Bones of all sizes littered the landscape, picked clean and bleached by the sun. This was a land ruled by a single, gluttonous monarch, and I was a trespasser in its kingdom of death. For weeks, I became its shadow. Stalking the behemoth was an art form, a terrifying dance on the edge of a razor. My enhanced perception and the stealth skill were all that kept me from becoming another set of bones decorating the plains. The Allosaurus was even larger than I remembered. A walking mountain of muscle and instinct. It moved with the lazy confidence of an animal that has never known true fear. Its name, in my mind, was Scar Jaw, for a deep, healed gash that ran from the corner of its mouth up towards its eye, a trophy from some long-forgotten battle. My intelligence, now significantly higher than a standard raptor's, allowed me to do more than just observe. I analyzed. I catalogued its habits, its hunting patterns, its moments of vulnerability. It was powerful, yes, but it was also predictable. It favored a specific watering hole at dawn. It slept through the hottest part of the day in the shade of a massive rock formation. It had a blind spot on its lower left side, a result of the same injury that had scarred its jaw. Every piece of information was a weapon. Every observation, a sharpening stone for the blade of my revenge. But this land was not empty. To stay near Scar Jaw meant contending with its court of lesser predators and scavengers. This territory was a high-level grinding zone, and I used it to my full advantage. I encountered a pack of Deinonychus, smaller cousins to my own species, fighting over a carcass. They were level 8, arrogant and fierce. The old Kale would have fled without a thought. The new Kale saw an opportunity. I waited until their squabble was at its peak, then used pounce from a rocky outcrop, landing directly on the back of their alpha. My obsidian claw, powered by my growing strength, found its mark in the creature's spine. Critical hit. Target paralyzed. The pack scattered in confusion. I dispatched the fallen alpha quickly. Kill confirmed, Deinonychus alpha, level 9. XP gained, 120. Essence absorbed. They returned, enraged, but without their leader, their attack was disorganized. I used my superior agility to weave between them, my claws flashing. It was not a brawl, it was a dissection. I isolated one, then another, using the terrain to my advantage, never allowing them to surround me. One by one, they fell. Level up. Kale level 8. You have 5 unallocated stat points. New skill unlocked, serrated claws, passive. Your claw attacks now inflict a bleed status effect, causing damage over time. The new skill was a game changer. Now, even a glancing blow was potentially fatal. My attacks had a lingering poison. I invested my new points into strength and agility, needing to bridge the physical gap between myself and Scar Jaw. My body continued to change. I was larger now than any Utahraptor I had ever seen, save for the old alpha, Cord. My movements were utterly silent when I willed them to be, my senses so acute I could taste the direction of the wind. My stalking of Scar Jaw grew bolder. I learned its patrol routes, the paths it took through its vast domain. And I began to interfere. Subtly, at first. When it was stalking a herd of Camptosaurus, I would cause a small rock slide from a cliff far away. The sound would be just enough to spook the herd, making them scatter moments before Scar Jaw could charge. The beast would roar in frustration, unable to pinpoint the cause of the disturbance. It was a petty act, but it was satisfying. A tiny taste of the helplessness I had once felt. Another time, I found one of its kills, a large Stegosaurus, half-eaten. I spent hours dragging the massive carcass into a deep, muddy bog. When Scarjaw returned for its meal, it found nothing but drag marks leading into the mire. Its bellow of fury echoed across the plains for a full minute. These acts served a dual purpose. They sowed confusion and frustration in my enemy, and they allowed me to test the limits of my own abilities without direct confrontation. My intelligence was becoming my greatest asset. I started to see the world not as a landscape, but as a series of interlocking systems. Physics, biology, instinct. They were all cogs in a machine I could manipulate. I discovered I could use my claws to weaken the base of trees, setting them up to fall with a well-aimed push. I learned to identify poisonous flora, not for consumption, but for application. This led to a new level of strategic thinking. Level up! Kale level 10? You have 5 unallocated stat points. Intelligence threshold reached. New skill unlocked, analyze. View basic stats, level, and weaknesses of a target. Cost, 20 energy. This was the tool I had been waiting for. The next day, I found Scarjaw sleeping in its shaded alcove. I crept as close as I dared, my heart hammering against my ribs. I focused on the colossal, sleeping form and activated Analyze. Target, Allosaurus. Name, Scarjaw. Level, 25. HP, 9,540 10,000. Status, sleeping. Stats. Strength, 95. Agility, 40. Intelligence, 8. Vitality, 80. Weaknesses, low intelligence, left side blind spot, old leg injury, right rear, susceptible to bleed. Level 25. The number was staggering. My own level felt pitifully small in comparison. His strength was astronomical. A single clean hit would obliterate me. But his intelligence was abysmal. And he was susceptible to bleed. My new core ability. The path to victory became clear. This would not be a contest of strength. It would be a battle of 1,000 cuts. A war of attrition. I would bleed the giant dry. Now, I needed a battlefield. Not one of his choosing, but one of my own creation. I spent the next week searching, my mind working like a general's planning a campaign. I found it in a region of geothermal activity at the northern edge of the territory. It was a treacherous maze of geysers, boiling mud pits, and narrow canyons carved by ancient lava flows. The ground was unstable, the air thick with sulfur. For Scarjaw, it was a death trap. Its massive weight would be a liability on the brittle ground. For me, with my agility and lightness, it was a jungle gym. Now, the final phase of my plan began, the bait. I needed to lure Scarjaw into my chosen arena. And I knew exactly how to do it. He was a creature of pride and gluttony. The ultimate insult would be to steal his kill, not by hiding it, but by claiming it right in front of him. I stalked him for 2 days, waiting for the right opportunity. It came in the form of a lone triceratops, old and separated from its herd. Scarjaw engaged it in a titanic struggle. The ground shook with their battle. The Allosaurus was a whirlwind of brute force, its jaws snapping, its claws tearing great gouges in the triceratops's armored frill. The herbivore fought back valiantly, its horns a deadly threat, but the outcome was inevitable. Scarjaw finally landed a killing bite to the neck, roaring in triumph over its fallen foe. It feasted for a short time, then, sated, it moved off towards the watering hole, intending to return later. This was my chance. I emerged from my hiding spot, my heart a frantic drum. I ran to the massive carcass, a mountain of fresh meat. I did not try to hide it. I did the opposite. I began to feast, tearing at the choicest parts, making as much noise as I could. I was a usurper, claiming the king's throne in his own court. It didn't take long. A distant, questioning roar reached me. Scarjaw was returning. I continued my mock feast, my senses on fire, every muscle coiled and ready. The ground began to tremble. He was running. I saw him crest a nearby hill, his silhouette a terrifying blot against the sky. He saw me. He saw the runt he had tried to kill, standing on his prize, defying him. His questioning roar turned into a shriek of pure, incandescent rage. I had wounded his pride, the one thing more sensitive than his flesh. He was no longer hunting. He was charging with reckless abandon. Just as I had planned. I snatched one last piece of flesh, then turned and fled. Not in a panic, but with calculated speed. I ran directly towards the geothermal maze. The chase was on. His thunderous footsteps were right behind me, shaking the very earth I ran upon. He was closing the distance, his speed terrifying even with his massive size. But I was not running from him. I was leading him. Leading him to the place where giants go to die. The air grew thick with the stench of sulfur as I entered the geyser fields. I could feel the heat radiating from the ground through the soles of my feet. Behind me, Scarjaw roared, a sound of frustration as the terrain narrowed, forcing him to slow his reckless charge. This was my arena. The ground was a patchwork of solid rock and thin, brittle crusts hiding pools of boiling mud. I had spent days mapping it, memorizing the safe paths, the weak points, the locations of the most active geysers. My agility was my greatest advantage here. I leaped from stone to stone, a grey blur against the hellish landscape. Scarjaw, in contrast, was a catastrophe of mass. He lumbered into the maze, his massive feet cracking the ground with every step. He was forced to test his footing, his advance slowing to a crawl. His rage, however, was undiminished. "You are fast, little one," his thoughts seemed to roar, a palpable wave of fury. "But this maze has no exit for you." I darted behind a plume of steam, breaking his line of sight. The battle had begun. I activated stealth and circled around a large rock formation, approaching from his blind side. His attention was focused on where he'd last seen me. He was sniffing the air, his tiny brain struggling to process the trick. This was my first opening. I burst from the steam cloud, a silent missile of muscle and claw. I activated Pounce, launching myself not at his head or neck, but at his right rear leg. The one my analyzer skill had marked with an old injury. My new, serrated killing claw, reinforced by levels of accumulated strength, sank deep into the thick muscle of his thigh. Critical hit. Weakness exploited. Damage dealt, 150 HP. Bleed status inflicted. Scarjaw bellowed, a sound of shock and pain, and twisted violently. I was already gone, disengaging and vanishing back into the sulphurous fog before he could retaliate. He looked down at his leg, at the deep gash pouring blood onto the hot ground. Scarjaw HP, 9390 10000. Bleed damage, 10 HP per 5 seconds. It was working. A tiny drop from a vast ocean of health, but it was a start. His rage now had a focus. He wasn't just chasing a thief, he was fighting a wound. He swiped his massive tail, smashing a rock pillar near where I'd been, sending shards of stone flying. I watched from a distance, my mind calm, processing. The plan was sound. Hit and run. Bleed him out. Use the environment. He took a heavy step forward, and the ground beneath his foot groaned in protest. A spiderweb of cracks appeared around his foot. He was standing on a thin crust above a mud pot. I needed to break it. I scanned the area. Above him, on the canyon wall, was a collection of loose boulders, precariously balanced. It would take all my strength. I circled around again, climbing the steep rock face with practiced ease. I reached the ledge, my muscles screaming in protest from the climb. I looked down. Scarjaw was still testing the ground, confused by the instability. I placed my feet and shoulders against the largest boulder and pushed. It didn't budge. Insufficient strength. Action failed. Damn it. I couldn't give up on the idea. I had to be smarter. I didn't need to move the whole thing. I just needed to disrupt its balance. I examined the base of the boulder. It was wedged against a smaller, more manageable rock. If I could dislodge that keystone, the larger one would fall. I dug my claws in, pulling and wrenching at the smaller rock. It shifted. Then, with a grinding screech, it tore loose. The massive boulder above it teetered for a heart-stopping moment, then plunged downwards. It didn't hit Scarjaw directly. That was never the plan. It slammed into the brittle ground right in front of him. The impact was immense. The entire crust shattered. With a roar of surprise, Scarjaw's front half plunged into the boiling, viscous mud beneath. Environmental damage. Target submerged. Damage dealt, 500 HP. Burn status inflicted. Screams of agony, unlike any I had heard before, tore from his throat. The superheated mud clung to him, searing his flesh, cooking him alive. He thrashed wildly, his powerful rear legs finding purchase on more solid ground, and began to pull himself out. He was wounded. Badly. Scarjaw HP, 8 520 10 000. He was also more dangerous than ever. Pain had burned away his arrogance, replacing it with focused, murderous intent. He finally dragged his mud-caked body free, his hide steaming, his eyes burning with hatred. He saw me on the ledge above. He ignored the treacherous ground and charged, aiming to slam into the canyon wall and bring me down. It was exactly what I was hoping for. I ran along the ledge, leading him towards the largest geyser in the field, a monster that erupted every few minutes with predictable force. I could feel the ground beginning to tremble, a sign of an imminent eruption. I timed my sprint perfectly. As I raced past the geysers more, I leaped across a chasm to the other side. Scarjaw, blinded by rage and pain, charged straight into the trap. Just as he reached the center of the clearing, the geyser exploded. A pillar of superheated water and steam erupted from the earth directly beneath him, lifting his multi-ton body into the air like a toy. Environmental damage. Target launched. Damage dealt, 1000 HP. Burn status worsened. He was tossed and battered by the raw power of the earth, landing in a heap 50 feet away. His roar was weaker now, choked with pain. Scarjaw HP, 7 250 10 000. This was my chance to press the attack. I descended from the ledge and approached the downed giant. He was struggling to rise, his body battered, his old leg injury clearly aggravated. I didn't get careless. I stayed on his wounded left side, in his blind spot. I darted in, my claw a flashing scalpel. Slash across his flank. Damage dealt, 75 HP. Bleed inflicted. I danced away as his tail swiped wildly. Another dash, this time at his neck. Damage dealt, 80 HP. Bleed inflicted. Again and again, I struck. Each blow was minor on its own, but they were accumulating. The bleed status was stacking, the damage over time notifications ticking away in my vision like a death clock. He was a giant being brought down by 1,000 paper cuts. He finally managed to get to his feet, swaying unsteadily. His hide was a patchwork of burns, cuts, and caked mud. He was breathing in ragged, painful gasps. Scarjaw HP, for 510 000. Half his health was gone. He let out a low, guttural growl, a sound not of rage, but of desperation. Then he did something unexpected. He turned and ran. The great king of the plains, the apex predator, was fleeing from a single Utahraptor. But I would not allow it. I had chosen this ground for a reason. There was no escape. I herded him, using my speed to cut off his paths, forcing him deeper into the maze. I drove him towards the final set piece of my arena, a wide, seemingly stable plain of dark, volcanic rock that ended at a sheer cliff face. He saw it as his only way out. He galloped across the plain, putting distance between us. I let him go. The plain wasn't stable. It was the roof of a massive, hollow lava tube. And I had spent 2 days weakening the support pillars from within. As Scar-Jaw reached the center of the plain, I darted into a small fissure I had prepared. It led into the lava tube below. I ran to the central, most critical pillar, a column of rock I had already chipped away to a fraction of its original thickness. I slammed my body against it. Once. Twice. On the third impact, with a groan that shook the very foundations of the maze, it shattered. Above, Scar-Jaw felt the ground give way. With a final, terrified roar, the entire plain collapsed, plunging the mighty Allosaurus into the darkness of the earth. I scrambled out of the fissure just in time to see him disappear into the newly formed sinkhole. The crash echoed for a long time. Then, silence. Target has fallen. Calculating fall damage. Massive damage dealt, 3000 HP. Status: crippled. Immobilized. I peered over the edge. He was alive. Broken, but alive. He lay on the floor of the lava tube, 20 feet below, his legs twisted at unnatural angles. He was completely at my mercy. The same mercy he had shown me. I descended into the pit. He watched me approach, his one good eye tracking my every move. The fire of rage was gone, replaced by something I recognized. Fear. I walked up to his massive head and stood before him, the runt he had left for dead. His breathing was shallow. He tried to snap his jaws, but the movement was weak, pathetic. I did not gloat. I did not screech in triumph. I just stood there, letting him see me. Letting him understand. The system chimed. Legendary objective, a runt's revenge. Final step, execute the target. I raised my left foot. My killing claw, the symbol of my rebirth, gleamed in the dim light. I looked into his eye, the eye of the monster that had defined my life through its cruelty. And I brought my claw down, plunging it deep into his orbital socket, ending the reign of the giant. Kill confirmed, Allosaurus, level 25. Legendary victory. Massive experience gained. Level up. Level up. Level up. Kale level 15? A torrent of brilliant, golden energy, far more potent than any I had felt before, flowed from his corpse into me. It was an intoxicating flood of power. My body surged, my muscles hardened, my senses expanded to an unbelievable degree. High-tier essence absorbed, Tyrant King's essence. New stat unlocked, Dominance. New title equipped, Giant Slayer. Grants bonus damage against targets larger than you. New ultimate skill unlocked, Apex Predator's Aura. Project an aura of fear, potentially paralyzing lower-level enemies. Passive effect, increased presence and intimidation. I stood over the corpse of my first nemesis, reborn once more, not in fire, but in vengeance. I was no longer just a hunter. I was an apex predator. And now, it was time to return home. STRYK and the pack had a debt to pay. And I was coming to collect. The journey back to my old pack's territory was a pilgrimage of power. I was a different creature from the one who had fled this land weeks ago. I was larger than STRYK now, my body a lean, powerful killing machine. My scales had darkened to the color of volcanic rock, and my eyes, once a simple brown, now held a faint, predatory glow. My new Apex Predator's aura was a palpable force. Smaller creatures would freeze or flee as I approached, sensing the sheer weight of my presence. I didn't even have to hunt them, they simply yielded the path. I was a king returning to a land of peasants. As I crossed the invisible border into their hunting grounds, the scent of them hit me. Familiar. And weak. My rage, which had cooled into a focused tool for my revenge on Scar Jaw, now rekindled. This was different. This was personal. This wasn't about survival. It was about retribution. But a frontal assault was too simple, too clean. They had left me to be torn apart slowly, to die in terror as a diversion. They would not be granted a quick death. They would be unmade. Their pack, their society, their sanity, I would dismantle it all before I granted them the mercy of oblivion. My new reign would begin with psychological warfare. I used to analyze from a distance, hidden on a ridge overlooking their main hunting plain. Target pack, Chords Raptors. Members, 12. Highest level, STRYK, level 11. Lowest level, RIL, level 6. Pack status, anxious. Food shortage. STRYK was level 11. He had grown stronger, likely taking a more dominant role in the hunt since I was gone. Good. The higher he stood, the harder he would fall. My first move was against their food supply. For 3 days, I became a ghost that haunted their hunts. When they organized a stalk on a herd of ornithopods, I used my speed to circle ahead of them, unseen. I didn't attack the herd. I simply revealed myself for a split second at the head of the pack, a silent, dark shape. The lead ornithopod saw me, shrieked a warning, and the entire herd bolted in a different direction long before the pack could position themselves. The raptors were left in the dust, confused and hungry. I did this again the next day. And the next. I never attacked them. I never made a sound. I was just a phantom that spoiled their every effort. Frustration began to mount in the pack. I could hear their agitated hisses and clicks from my hiding places. They were growing weaker, their hunger gnawing at their discipline. My next target was their sense of security. The pack laired in a series of caves at the base of a sandstone cliff. At night, they would sleep, secure in their numbers. Under the cover of darkness, I would use my stealth skill to approach their lair. I wouldn't attack. I would steal. The first night, I took a single pack member. A young male named Vec, who was often on the periphery. I waited until he was in a deep sleep, then moved in. It was pathetically easy. My claw sliced his throat before he could even register my presence. I didn't leave the body. I dragged it away, miles from the den, and consumed the essence myself. Kill confirmed, Utah Raptor, level 7. XP gained, 80. The next morning, the pack awoke to find one of their own simply gone. No tracks. No sounds of a struggle. Nothing. Vec had vanished from the face of the earth. Fear, a scent far more potent than blood, began to permeate the pack. They posted guards that night. 2 of them, huddled together at the cave entrance for warmth and courage. I watched them for hours. Their attention would eventually wane. Their heads would nod. I waited for that moment of shared weakness. I moved with the silence of a falling leaf. I took them both. One, then the other, in the space of 2 heartbeats. Again, I dragged the bodies away, leaving no trace. Now, there was panic. Cord, the old alpha, was losing control. His authority was built on providing food and safety, and both were gone. STRYK used the chaos to his advantage. Cord is old. His senses are dull. I heard STRYK screeching one afternoon. He cannot protect us from this phantom. A new alpha is needed. A stronger alpha. The challenge was made. Cord, weakened by hunger and stress, was no match for a younger, stronger, and well-fed STRYK. The fight was brutal but short. STRYK was merciless, exploiting Cord's every weakness. He ended it by breaking Cord's leg, the ultimate insult, a twisted echo of what he did to me. He didn't kill the old alpha. He exiled him, leaving him crippled and alone, a fate worse than death for a social creature. Stryk was now the alpha. He stood before the remaining 8 pack members, puffing out his chest. "I will protect you," he declared. "I will find this demon and I will kill it." His first act as alpha was to move the lair. He chose a more defensible position, a narrow cleft in the rocks with only one entrance. He thought it would make them safe. It only made them a more concentrated target. He ordered the entire pack to hunt together, believing their combined numbers would be a deterrent. I watched their pathetic attempt to corner a Dinosaurus. They were clumsy, their movements born of fear rather than predatory instinct. As they finally managed to isolate their prey, I made my move. I didn't attack the raptors. I attacked their kill. I burst from the tree line, a dark streak of fury. I didn't use stealth. I wanted them to see me. I activated my apex predator's aura. The effect was instantaneous. The remaining 8 raptors froze. Their minds, already frayed, were overwhelmed by the sheer force of my presence. Lower-level members, like Real, collapsed to the ground, paralyzed by primal terror. Stryk, being a higher level, managed to resist the paralysis, but he was stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. He recognized me. He saw the runt he had sentenced to death, now larger, darker, and radiating an aura of absolute power. I ignored them. With contemptuous ease, I slammed into the Dinosaurus, my claws and teeth tearing it apart. It was a show of force. A demonstration. I killed their prize in seconds, then stood over the carcass, fixing my glowing eyes on Stryk. I let the silence stretch, letting the terror sink into their bones. Then, I did the one thing that would shatter his newfound authority completely. I let out a call. A low, rumbling sound that carried a complex message. A call for the outcast. Miles away, the crippled form of Cord, the deposed alpha, heard it. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. Then, I turned my back on Stryk and his terrified pack. I took a large portion of the kill and began dragging it away, leaving them with the scraps. I was not just a phantom anymore. I was their new god, and I had just stolen their sacrifice. Stryk could only watch, his alpha status a hollow mockery. He had promised them protection, and he couldn't even protect their dinner. The seeds of doubt were sown. His pack looked at him, then at my retreating form, and for the first time, they saw Stryk not as a savior, but as the one who had brought this curse upon them. I dragged the meat to a secluded spot and waited. It took half a day, but he came. Cord. Limping, emaciated, defeated. He saw me and the meat I had brought, and he stopped, confused and wary. I pushed a piece of the meat towards him with my snout. He flinched, expecting an attack. I just waited. Slowly, hesitantly, he approached and began to eat, his first real meal in days. I wasn't being merciful. This was strategic. An alpha's greatest weapon is his pack. And I was about to steal Stryk's, one disillusioned soul at a time, starting with the one he had wronged the most, besides me. The final act was about to begin. It would not be a fight. It would be a judgment. And Cord would be my first witness. Stryk's reign would be a short and brutal one, ending with the return of the ghost he himself had created.